So who is the reporters of the group 3? Reporter 1, we have Miss Makapaar. Hi everyone, I am Indira Makapaar. Reporter 2, we have Mr. Singh.
Hi, I am Nasrallah T. Singh.
Reporter 3, we have Mr. Bacharo. Reporter 4, we have Mr. Ruam. And Reporter 5, we have Miss Midtimbang.
Hello everyone, my name is Shaira M. Midtimbang.
So these are the reporters of the group 3. And we were going to discuss to you the communication and literature. Our objectives: number 1, identify the key features in analyzing literary texts. 2, determine the processes in writing literary text analysis. 3, write a literary analysis. 4, observe honesty and acknowledging sources. So for enduring understanding, these are the key features of literary analysis. Number 1, we have an arguable thesis. Number 2, careful attention to the language of the text. Number 3, attention to patterns or themes. Number 4, a clear interpretation. So for the number 1, an arguable thesis. A literary analysis is a form of argument. You are arguing that your analysis of a literary work is valid, and also your thesis then should be arguable. Thesis statements should be arguable, no matter if you are writing a persuasive or expository paper, because you as a writer, you should take a stand and assert your claim in a way that is clear, valid, and concise. But always remember, it should be debatable. Number 2, careful attention to the language of the text. The key to analyzing a text is looking carefully at the language, which is the foundation of its meaning. Specific words, images, metaphors, these are where analysis begins. You may also bring in contextual information, such as cultural, historical, or biographical facts, or you may refer to similar texts. But the words, phrases, and sentences that make up the text you are analyzing are your primary source when dealing with texts. That's what literature teachers mean by close reading. Reading with assumption that every word of a text is meaningful. If you're working in academic literature like theses, essays, and articles, you should look closely at the language because it is the foundation of its meaning, and also correct use of terminology and language facilitates your communication and heightens the credibility of your work. Attention to patterns or themes. Literary analyses are usually built on evidence of meaningful patterns or themes within a text or among several texts. These patterns and themes reveal meaning. So here, for example, you might analyze how the images of ice, snow, and wind, right? And also the repetition of the word nothing contribute to a sense of loneliness and desolation in a poem about a winter scene. A clear interpretation. A literary analysis demonstrates the plausibility of its thesis by using evidence from the text and sometimes relevant contextual evidence to explain how the language and patterns found their support a particular interpretation. When you write a literary analysis, you show readers one way the text may be read and understood. That is your interpretation. A clear interpretation leads to the establishment of explanatory concepts that can serve as a guide for future research studies. And also, it opens a new avenues of intellectual adventure and stimulate quest for more knowledge.
Process in analyzing text. Study the text with a critical eye. When we read a literary work, we often come away with the reaction to it. We like it, we hate it, it makes us cry or laugh, it perplexes us. So, Study the text with a critical eye, which more focus on how the readers give feedback towards the literary work. For example, of how they feel towards the literary work, like reading eulogy, or if we read the eulogy, it's either we feel sorrowful or sympathy. So that's the study the text with a critical eye. Examples: what does it say and what does it do? What elements make up this text? How these elements work together or fail to work together. 2. Choose a method for analyzing the text. There are various ways to analyze your subject. 3 common focuses are on the text itself, on your own experience reading it, and on the other cultural, historical, or literary context. In the number 2, if you choose a text to analyze, look for on this suit the assignment. So here's the first one, the text itself. Explores the way the text affects you or develops meanings as you read through it from beginning to end. By doing such a close reading, you are slowing down the process to notice how one element to a text leads you to expect something, confirming earlier suspicions or surprises. By closely examining the language of the text as you experience it, you explore how it leads you to a set of responses, both intellectual and emotional. When trying to interpret of literary work, readers should pay close attention to the text itself and disregarding outside influences. So the text itself, it depends on how the readers response and develop the meaning in each text. There are some points of the text that may lead to suspicious or surprise. It is also affect both intellectuals and emotion. And lastly, the reader should pay attention to towards the text itself. Context. Analyze the text as a part of some larger context, as a part of a certain time or place in history, or as an expression of a certain culture. How does this text relate to the time and place of its creation? As one of many other texts like it, it is a representative of a genre. How is this text like or unlike others of its kind? How does it use, play with, or from the conventions of the genre? So, in the context, for example, high and low context. In high context culture, which is more focused on verbal and non-verbal, but very often, in high context culture, you might be expect more on health, about a health of the family. In low context culture, it is more focused on verbal. In low context culture, you will expect more on task-oriented business relationship. Your own response as a reader. Explore the way the text affects you or develops meaning as you read through it from beginning to end. By closely examining the language of the text as you experience it, you explore how it leads you to set responses by both intellectual and emotional. So, your own response as a reader, it is same for it is similar to text itself. It is depend on how the readers response and develop the the meaning of the text, and they are and examining the language of the text as you experience it, you explore how it leads you to set responses both emotional and intellectual. So, in your responses as a reader, it also affects the intellectual and emotional when you respond towards the literary pieces or the context itself or the text itself.
Reading the work more than once. Reading literature, watching movies, or listening to speeches is similar to a driving to a new location. The first time you go, you must concentrate on getting there. On subsequent trips, you can notice other aspects, the scenery, the curve of the roads, and the other possible routes that you could not notice in the first time. When you first encounter a work of literature, you normally concentrate on the storyline, and the overall meaning. You may observe how the effects are achieved, what the components are, and how they fit together when distinct patterns emerge, and how the author crafted the work by experiencing it multiple times. Number 2. Compose a strong thesis. The thesis of literary analysis should be specific, limited, and open up a potential disagreement. Likewise, it should be analytical, not evaluate. Avoid thesis statements that make overall judgment, rather than offer a way of seeing the text. Number 3, do a close reading. When you analyze a text, you need to find specific brief passage that support your presentation. Then you should interpret those passage in terms of their language, their context, of your reaction to them as a reader. Example here are what language provides evidence to support your thesis. And lastly, what image or metaphors are used in this thesis?
Good afternoon everyone, my name is Renato Sirom Jr. and let us continue the 6th and 7th process in analyzing text. Number 6. Find the evidence to support your interpretation. The part of the text you examine in your close reading become the evidence you use to support your interpretation. As always, it is better to back up your interpretation with proof or factual evidence. Your interpretation will be better and stronger. It will also help the readers to understand the context of the analysis. The evidence you rely on to support your interpretation is delivered from your attentive study of the text. But when writing a literary analysis, you are entitled only to our own well-supported and well-argued opinion. One cannot simply summarize literature in a literary analysis. Either it's a statement that communicates a writer's own interpretation of the work as well as a critical review of it. When you analyze a text, you must treat it like any other argument. You need to discuss how the text creates an effect or express a theme. And then you have to show evidence from the text. It is necessary to explain the effect of the theme that the text expresses, and then to provide evidence to justify statements, to subs- to substantiate argument to substantiate your argument. You can use significant storyline or structural components, important characters, pattern of language, imagery, or action. Number 7. Pay attention to matters of style. Literary analysis have certain conventions for using pronouns in verbs. In informal papers, it is okay to use the first person. Informal essays make assertions directly, claim authority to make statement about the text. Discuss the textual features in the present tense even if quotation from the text are in another tense. Describe the historical context of the setting in the past tense. It is important to pay attention to matters of style. When you writing analysis, you must use words that are easy to understand. Sometimes there are words that can make the meaning of the other text different from what it could be. In informal papers, it is okay to write in first person, but in more formal papers, it is necessary to be direct to the point and eliminate unnecessary words and phrases. It is also important to take note that the textual features must be written in the present tense and use the past tense to describe the historical context of the settings.
Cite and document source appropriately. Use APA citation and documentation style unless told otherwise. So, example, include person communication and setting interwebsite. Format quotation properly and use signal parasites when needed be. Think about format and design. Brief essay do not required. Headings, text divisions are usually marked by transitions between paragraphs. In longer paper, through heads can be helpful.
Thank you all for listening. I hope every one of you will have learned something from our report. Thank you, guys.